Next one. Start with the prayer. Somagyantamirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachadesha Tarini. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhamulamada Shakham Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandam Siyasya Parnani Yastam Vedana Saveda Ved. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Third, after the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end. And for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. These trees, the roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. This process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 14th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. So it's a twofold process. No? That means become attached to service of the Lord and become detached from service to illusion. Both things should go simultaneously. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. So process of breaking attachment to the material world is very important. Because in this material world, we all are stuck because of mainly attachment. Just like if somebody is tied, with certain kind of ropes in particular prison, or certain kind of shackles are there. That's why this fellow cannot escape like that. So our attachments are like that kind of shackles which actually keeps us in this material world, like that. So now everybody in this world may look like moving freely, but what binds them to this material world is the attachment. So this attachment has to be cut. Then only one can transcend this material world and go back to the spiritual world. So the way to cut this material attachment is to engage in service of the Lord also. That's why it's a twofold process. So sometimes jnanis, they just want to get rid of the material attachment, want to cut the material attachment. But because they lack the devotional fervor, they don't have devotional attitude, they don't engage in service of the Lord. That's why they actually will not able to cut off. Truly, they will have to come back to this material world. Aruhya Krishna Padam Param Tataha. So it says that one will again fall, even though sometimes one may try to work on their attachments and may apparently try to go, even towards so-called liberation, but he will come down again because he is not having the real engagement of service to the Lord. So all our attachments can be completely eradicated, material attachment, by service to Guru and Krishna. So that's the real astra. That's a weapon which can cut off all our attachments to this material world, and one can go back to the spiritual world. So the process of breaking attachment to material is described in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded with so many branches. representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entities' activities, namely religion, economic development, and sense gratification and liberation. Now there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upwards. But there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as trees reflection is situated on water. So it's a very nice point that the desire is actually what makes the spiritual world reflect. I mean, we actually come to this material world because of desire. That is the desire to enjoy independent of the Lord. So that is the foundation on which this material world exists. When we have no desire to enjoy independent of the Lord, then one can immediately attain spiritual world. It's like that. So that's what Srila Prabhupada said. In one word, if Prabhupada, he asked that, how can I go back to God? He asked, one word can you say? And Prabhupada just said desire. So if you can just change all your desire from material to spiritual, you just desire to go back to God, then you can actually attain the spiritual world. So, in other words, the tree of this material is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as the tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. This tree being the reflection of the real tree is an exact replica. This tree being the reflection of the real tree is an exact replica. Everything is there. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. And from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, then the three gunas, then the five gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta. Then the 10 senses, the Shendriya, mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then the material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees. And the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is a perverted reflection. So the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. Therefore, both the Prakriti and Purusha must be there. In the spiritual world, however, Prakriti is the Supreme Lord's internal energy and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. In the spiritual world, however, Prakriti is the Supreme Lord's internal energy and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. So, in spiritual world also, Prakriti is there, but that is the internal energy of the Lord, Antaranga Shakti. And the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. That is explained in Bhagavad Gita 8.8. Purusha sa parah. The difference between the spiritual and material manifestation is that the former is eternal and the latter is temporary. So our existence in material is temporary. It's not going to be permanent. Our body, our relatives, our home, our jobs, our finance, everything is temporary in this world. Nothing is going to remain permanent. But in the spiritual world, all our assets are permanent. Our relationship with Krishna is permanent. All our spiritual form remains permanent. Our so many varieties of services what we do to Krishna, that also remains permanent. All the devotees who are related to us in the spiritual world, they are also permanent. And our relationship to Krishna and through others through Krishna is also permanent. So it says, a reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of that real tree has to be cut off. So this is the material reflection, this material world. So that has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. So the purpose of Vedas is to get rid of this cycle of birth and go to the spiritual world, or And the person sometimes who is Jivana Mukta, who has actually got truly liberated, sometimes may still be in this body, be in the material world. But because he has no attachment to this material world, so for him it doesn't matter whether it's material world or spiritual world, it doesn't matter at all. So it says, if one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of Godhead himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. So that is the purpose of the Vedas. Vedesha sarver ahameva vedyo. So to attain Krishna, to attain Krishna means to attain the abode of Krishna as well. So that's the purpose of the Vedas. But, but if somebody is attracted only to ritualistic ceremonies, formed of the Vedas, then one will remain stuck in this material world. That's why Krishna told also to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. He says that Triguniya Vishya Veda, Nistrigunya Bhavarjuna. So he says that these Vedas are actually under the influence of three modes of material nature. So Arjuna, you transcend them, transcend these three modes of material nature, which is all the subject matter of Vedas. Because the Vedas do talk about Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, which is trying to just offer some kind of material gain to the jivas. But the actual purpose, actual gain what one can attain from Vedas is to come out of this material world and go to the spiritual world, attain the eternal spiritual world. Then this verse, very famous verse. Adashodvam parastha tasya sakha guna pravardha vishaya pravala adasya mulani anushtanam antatani karma anubandhini manushya loke. Translation: the branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. So branches of this tree extend downward and upward, and nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Purport. The description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As the tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. You can see. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes the tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionally greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. So sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes the tract of land is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionally greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. By development of the different modes of nature, we develop different senses, and by the senses, we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on, the sense objects. The subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. The tendencies toward piety and impiety are considered to develop from these secondary roots, which spread in all directions. The real root is called from Brahma Loka, and the other roots are in the human planetary systems. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in the upper planetary systems, he comes down to this earth and renew his karma or fruitive activities for promotion. This planet of human being is considered the field of activities. Text 3 and 4. न रूपमस्येह तथोपलभ्यते नान्तो न चाद्य न सम्प्रतिष्ठा अश्वत्थमेनं सुविरूढमूलामसङ्गशस्त्रेण दृढेन चित्वा तथा पदं तत्परिमार्गकृतव्यं यस्मिन् गता न निवर्तन्ति भूयः त्वमेव चाद्यं पुरुषं प्रपद्ये यतः प्रवृत्ति प्रसृता पुराणी. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. no one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strong rooted tree with a weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Mm. So, the weapon of detachment is being told here. Now, this weapon of detachment works, as I said, it's like two way. When you, as you become attached to Krishna, that way you develop the true detachment also. That is the verse. वासुदेव भगवती भक्ति योगा प्रयोजितः जनयत्वा शुवैराग्यम ज्ञानम चेत अहेतुकम. So he says that when you actually perform devotional service to Lord Vasudev, then you develop, you actually awaken devotion to the Lord, that awakens bhakti, that you get bhakti, and also you develop detachment, vairagya, the true detachment also develops. So both things comes. That's the result of awakening of, that's the result of performing devotional service to Lord Vasudev, like that he says. So, as another verse, Pasangam Majaram Pasham Atmano Kavayo Viduhu Saveva Sadhu Shukrito Mokshadvaram Apavatum. So this Pasangam Majaram Pasham, the attachment to this material world is very, very strong. Atmano Kavayo Viduhu, even the great personalities also have told, Saiva Sadhu Shukrito, but the same attachment, if it is doubted towards the great personalities, the great soul, the devotees of the Lord, Mokshadvaram Apavatum, then one can actually get liberated, like that. So, so this attachment, actually is the real cause of our being in this material world. So the weapon of detachment. But the weapon of detachment is actually the devotional service, because when you serve the Lord, then you develop true detachment in that way. So that's what we are trying to say. So therefore, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and then there surrender to that Supreme Personality Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport. It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upward, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. This one. Yeah, so it says, when entangled, okay, since the root is upward, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. Cannot be understood. The real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Real form of the banyan tree. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled, so real form of this banyan tree means this is a reflection, so real form. That's why he's saying here. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. That is, spiritual world cannot be perceived. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. What we see here is only the reflection. So I'm saying not the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father is the son of such and such person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma. One is generated by the Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. One has to search out the origin of this tree. Who's the origin of this tree? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. So one has to search out through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality Godhead. Then by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality. Mm. So what solution is giving that one should come to the Supreme Lord. That's the end of the research work. And it says, through the association of person with knowledge, we can understand the Supreme Lord. So, because one has to search out the origin of the Supreme Personality Godhead through the association of person. Because in the association of devotees only you get to know about the Supreme Lord properly. And then by understanding, one becomes gradually detached. By understanding the Lord, one becomes gradually detached from the false reflection of the reality. See, that's what the solution is giving. So, Jnana and Vairagya. So, so when you engage in devotional service of the Lord, then two kits of Mother Bhakti. Is what is that? Jnana and Vairagya. I think I explained before about awakening of devotion. So, I mean, what I meant actually is the knowledge. So knowledge and detachment, both are the product of devotional service. So real detachment and real knowledge, the transcendental knowledge you get by performing devotional service of the Lord. Like that. So by coming to the Lord and by engaging in devotional service, when you understand the Lord, when you get the knowledge of the Lord, then you can be detached from this material world also. That is the process. That's why then by understanding, when one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality, and by knowledge one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. So all of us are very much wanting to enjoy in this world. You can see all of us have very deep tendency to control, to enjoy, to lord over, to and also to actually be well-wishing friend of others. I mean, there's nothing wrong to being well-wishing friend, but we think in terms of that I am the well-wisher of all. Actually, the Lord is the supreme well-wisher. We can only act on behalf of the Lord. That's it. So all these varieties of misconceptions we carry. So the word asanga is very important in this connection because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures. One must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. So those who are in knowledge, we should hear from them and develop some kind of detachment. Very important, actually. The Gita is actually trying to help us. Sometimes we may be mechanically reading, but we have to understand that this all knowledge is actually not ordinary. It's amritam. It's actually nectar. It is completely divine, spiritual, not different from Krishna actually. So when we truly receive this knowledge, then one can become detached from this material enjoyment. The spirit of material enjoyment can just go away. One can just become very fixed in service to Lord. That's the result of actually understanding the spiritual science. That's what I'm saying. Therefore, we must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures. We must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of God. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to Him, surrender to the Lord. The description of that place whence having gone one never returns to this false reflected tree is given here. See, you read so many literatures, nobody talks about spiritual world, nobody talks about Lord. The Gita Bhagavatam is such a literature which only talks about the Supreme Lord and our real home. So the best thing we should do is to read Gita. All our reading propensity should be directed towards Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. The description of that place, whence having gone one never returns to this false reflected tree is given here. The Supreme Personality Godhead Krishna is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain favor of that personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender, and this is a result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, etc. So we have to gain the favor of the Supreme Lord. The way is to surrender to the Lord, and this is a result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting. So when you do reading, hearing, chanting, all your varieties of services, so actually the result is that you are actually taking shelter of the Lord more and more. You are able to surrender to the Lord more and more. So this result of performing devotional service, devotional process is that you become more and more surrendered devotee. And when you surrender to Lord more and more, that's how you are getting the favor of the Lord more and more in terms of getting more and more access to the service of the Lord. You are empowered to serve the Lord more and more. He is the cause of the extension of the material world, the Supreme Lord. This has already been explained by the Lord himself. Aham sarvasya prabhava. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of the strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders unto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material expansion. It's fine. Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama dvandair vimukta sukha dukkha sangir gachanti amura padamavyayam tat. What says? Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who unbewildered know how to surrender to the Supreme Person and attain to that eternal kingdom. Just a minute. Okay. So it says, those are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who are unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Very nice here. Purport. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride. So nirmana moha. So the pride is it's a great disease. My spiritual master says pride is the greatest sin. He says like that. So Krishna does not tolerate pride. So we have to come out of this disease of pride. This nirmana moha. So the surrendering process described here as the first qualification that one should not be deluded with pride, because the condition is puffed up, thinking himself the lord of the material nature. So we think ourselves that I am the lord, I am the controller, and everybody is trying to control in this world. And then so everybody is trying to pauses, and then when he pauses, he then tries to control, and then trying to control, he tries to enjoy. This is how the living entity does. And all conditions also doing like this. They try to pauses, then after they pauses, then they want to, by controlling, they want to enjoy. How it is. So all of us know, that's why there's the dhanam. So when you have dhanam, that is positive. Then janam. Then you get so many followers, and Sundari, and then when you want to have enjoyment like that. So that's why so one gets into the proprietorship, then controllership, and then enjoyship. So we think I am, this person is under me. It's a very great illusion. Nobody is under us. We are under the Lord. That understanding should be. Nobody is under us. So this understanding has to come. Otherwise, the pride always pushes us to think that I possess this. I control. I have influence on this fellow. I control them, and then I'm the enjoyer, and I have right to enjoy. So nobody is our follower. Nobody, nothing is our property, and we are not entitled for enjoyment of anyone and anything in this world. So this kind of clearance is required from the living entity side. Then only you are free from pride. Otherwise, somebody will think, I'm not proud, Prabhu, I'm okay, I'm good. No, the pride is this, that we think I'm possessing something. Immediately you think you possess something, that means a false pride. And when you think that you're possessing something, possessing some asset and some people, then you want to control. Mm. Control people. You will think that they're my followers, I want to control. And that's how you try to enjoy, like that. So that is how the divinity is trapped in this material world. Like that. So because of conditions puffed up, thinking into the Lord of material nature, it is very difficult for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of God. One should know by cultivation of real knowledge that he is not Lord of material nature. Yeah. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge. Hmm. Yeah. So it says, because the conditions popped up thinking into the Lord of the material nature, it is very difficult for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not Lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. So this pride has to be crushed. Pride has to be removed. When Indra became proud, the Lord arranged to crush his pride. You can see. So the pride is something which Lord does not tolerate and does not like, because that is the greatest obstacle. And all the conditioned souls are proud, proud fellows. All of us are proud because we all think somewhere that I'm the proprietor, I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer. So we all have to work on our pride. And what is the way to work on pride is to understand I'm simply a servant of the Lord. I'm no one's boss. I'm no one's, nothing belongs to me. Like that kind of nirmama has to be required. Nirman. No man. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Lord. Yeah, powerful point. So we are all expecting some honor, some kind of recognition, some kind of respect, and that becomes a cause of our being in this material world. Very deep point. So we are all hungry for honor, hungry for respect. So that becomes a cause of our bondage in this material world. So when one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion. For although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. Amazing. You see, you go to any place, no, we want to lord over. We want to lord over. We want to see that, this is my kingdom. Like, this is my kingdom. This is my, place. These are the people whom I influence, people I control, and that's how I enjoy. So we want to lord over everywhere we go. So our visit to any place in this world is very brief. Sorry, saying here. That prior to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has a foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. He just makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. And that's how we get complicated, and we are into so much trouble now. The whole world moves under this impression. It's a plight of all of us. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. No, we are not. So when one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by the familial, social, and national affections. When one is freed from such a false notion, then only we can be. Uh, People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land, earth, under the false impression that they are the property. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the property of this world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false association caused by familial, social, and national affections. So one has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When we get free from that notion, then we can become free from all the false association caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions. This is happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he says this, one has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own. Nothing is our own. Whatever we have on our only free will. And what is actually not his own. So our body also is not our own in that sense. Everything belongs to God. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Na tadbhashate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yadgat panarvatante tadhama paramam mama. That supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. The spiritual world, the abode of Supreme Personality Godhead, Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan, described here. In the spiritual sky, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity because all the planets are self-luminous. We have only one planet in this universe, the sun, which is self-luminous. But all the planets in the spiritual sky are self-luminous. The shining effulgence of all those planets called Vakunthas constitute the shining sky known as the Brahmajyoti. Actually, the effulgence is emanating from the planet of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan. Part of that shining effulgence is covered by the Mahat Tattva, the material world. Other than this, the major portion of that shining sky is full of spiritual planets, which are called Vaikuntha, chief of which is Golok Vrindavan. As long as living entity is in the dark material world, this dark material world, he is in conditional life. But as soon as he reaches the spiritual sky, by cutting through the false perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. Then there is no chance of his coming back here. In this conditional life, the living entity considers himself to be lord of this material world. But in this, his liberated state, he enters into the spiritual kingdom and becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord. There he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, and full knowledge. So, as long as the living entity is in the dark material world, he is in the conditional life. So, we are in the dark material world. Then we remain in the conditional life of birth and death. And as soon as we reach the spiritual sky, when we cut off our false perverted tree in this material world, then we are liberated. And there is no chance of coming back here. In this condition, the living entity considers himself to be lord of this material world, but in his liberated state, he enters into the spiritual kingdom and becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord, because he identifies himself as a servant of the Lord. There he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, and full knowledge. One should be captivated by this information. He should desire to transfer himself to that eternal world and extricate himself from this false reflection of reality. For one who is too much attached to this material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. One has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. One should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness and learn how to discharge devotional service. In this way, he can cut off his attachment to the material world. One cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. So we have to become attached to devotional service a lot. So we should be so attached, to reading, hearing, chanting. That's how we become attached to the Lord then. Therefore, one should take it very seriously. The devotional service that described in the 12th chapter is the only way to get out of this false representation of the real tree. That's what I was telling in the beginning. In the chapter 14, the contamination uh, of all kinds of processes by material nature is described. There is three modes of material nature. Only devotional service is described as purely transcendental. The words Paramam Mama are very important here. Actually, every nook and corner is a property of the Supreme Lord. But the spiritual world is Paramam, full of six opulences. Katha Upanishad 2.2.15 also confirms that in the spiritual world there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, or stars, na tatta surya bhati na chandra tarakam. For the whole spiritual sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and by no other means. Every nook and corner is the property of the Supreme Lord. But the spiritual world is parama, full of six opulences. So whole space sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and by no other means. Text 7. Mama evamsha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatanaha manashasthani indriyani prakritisthani karshati. The living entity in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Purport. In this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life and in his liberated state because becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly stated Sanatanaha. According to Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in the innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishuddhatva and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishuddhatva is the personal expansion and the living entities are the separate expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms like Lord Rama, Narasimha, Vishnumurti, and all the predominant deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions and living entities are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality Godhead, the individual entities of the Godhead are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities are also have fragmental portions of its qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity, as an individual soul, has its personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal as a Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord. He, in his liberated state, he is freed from this material condition, and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his liberated state, he is freed from this material condition, and is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned state life, he is dominated by the material modes of material nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. The living entity is not only human beings and the cats and dogs, but even the greater controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu are all parts and parts of the Supreme Lord. They're all eternal, they're all eternal, not temporary manifestation. The word karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence. See, false ego, the pride, I've seen. False ego, the pride, same thing. So, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in the material existence. So, mind is, based on false ego. Based on false ego, mind thinks different ways that I am the employer, I am the proprietor, I am the controller. Okay. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower space of life. It is clear, however, in this verse that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and senses. And when he is liberated, this material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. The following information is there in the Madhyanandra Shruti. Sava Esha Brahma Nishtha Idam Shariram Mrityam Atisja Brahma Visampadya Brahmana Pashyati Brahmana Shinoti Brahmana Vedam Sarvam Anubhavati. It is said here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body, and in his spiritual body he can see the Supreme Personality Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality Godhead as he is. From Smriti also it is understood. Vasanti yatra purusha sarve vaikunthamurtayaha. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality Godheads. As far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between the part and parcel divinities and the expansions of Vishnumurti. In other words, at liberation, the divinity gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality Godhead. The word Mamaya Vamsha, the fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. Fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here because the Sanskrit word Sanatana, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual soul, the fragmental portion of Supreme Lord is present. Individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. The hindus. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky. Revives his original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in the spiritual planet, and enjoy association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord. Just as the part and parcels of parts of gold are also gold. Sharira, so this is the verse. शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रमात्मतीश्वरः गृहीत्वेतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानिवाशयात्. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another, as the air carries aromas. Thus, he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Purport. Here, the living entity is described as Ishvara, controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. Minor independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends upon him. At the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him onto the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or a dog, he's sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he has, and if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of this next body, develops another body in the next life. So individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. See, one gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. So subtle body is the cause of our getting next body. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or struggling for existence. So we're transmigrating and we're struggling also while we're in this body. It's called karshati, struggle for existence. Shrotam chakshus parshanam cha rasanam granam eva cha adhisthaya manaschayam vishayanupsevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport. In other words, if the living entity alterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs in his next life, he gets a cat or dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure like water, but if you mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure, but consciousness changes according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When therefore one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, has the hog, demigod, or one of many other forms. For there are 84 lakh species. Utkramantam sitam vapi Munjan va gunadvitam vimudha nanu pashyanti jnana chakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Purport. The word Jnana Chaksha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to get in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge to understand from Bhagavad Gita, and similar literature heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. Every living entity is quitting his body under certain circumstances. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances, under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and they stay in a particular body. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and they stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. So those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body, is changing its body and showing in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. So it says, the result is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body in the same particular body. This Persons are realistically fooled by lust and desire, lose all power to understand their change of body, and they stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned divinity is suffering in this particular existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to thus people in general. For the conditional life is very much troublesome. Those who are very developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general. For the conditional life is very much troublesome. So actually, those who become devotees, they know that conditional life or material existence is very troublesome because they also have been the conditioned souls. Like all of us have been conditioned souls. We are conditioned souls even now. But as we come to Krishna consciousness, we are in the process of getting liberation. We are in the process of getting freed from this conditional life of material existence. So we, when experience the the bliss of Krishna consciousness, so we also want to see that others also can come out of that troublesome conditional life. So that's why a divinity, that's why a devotee, genuinely feels for the pain and misery of other divinities. It's very, very obvious and natural for the devotee to feel for the other's pain. That's why devotee just can't help but heal each. Krishna, he will do that because he knows that without the life, all these people are miserable. But when we ourselves are not convinced that Krishna consciousness is the people are actually miserable because of not having Krishna consciousness, then we will also not be serious in trying to give. We will not be taking that seriously, giving this message to others. So they should come out of it and be Krishna conscious, liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. And it's a yatanto yogi nashainam pasyantyatmanev sthitam yatanto pikritatmano nainam pashyanta chetasaha. The endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. Purport. There are many transcendentalists on the path of spiritual realization, but one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how things are changing in the body of the divinity. The word yogina is significant in this connection. In the present day, there are many so-called yogis and there are many so-called association of yogis, but they are actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied in the body if the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. They are called yatantopi katatmanaha. Even though they are endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of transmigration of the soul. Only those are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world, and the Supreme Lord. In other words, the bhakti yogis, so those who engage in pure devotion service in Krishna consciousness, can understand how things are taking place. The so-called yogis, they won't understand. Only devotees can understand everything clearly. How things are taking place. Yadadityaгаtam tejo jagadasayate khidam yachandramasi yachagno tattejo vidimamakam. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire also comes from me. Purport: the intelligent cannot understand how things are taking place, but one can begin to establish in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness lies lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in the material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of Supreme Lord, and he's giving here with the hint how they can come back to God and go back to Him. From this verse, we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole universe. There are different universes, and there are different suns, moons, and and planets also. But in each universe, there is only one sun. As said in Bhagavad Gita, the moon is one of the stars. Nakshatranam hamshashi. The sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. Oh. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They are set fire. They set fire. They set fire to prepare the food stuff. They set fire to start factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the divinities. Without their help, no divinity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be sun. Without his mercy, there cannot be moon. And without his mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the mercy of, with the help of sun, moon, or fire, no one can live. There are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Gamavishya cha bhutani dharayamiham ojasa pushnami chashadhi sarva somo bhutvarasatmakaha. I intend to each planet, and by my energy they sat in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. But it is understood that all the plants are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is described in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the divinities, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water. But when the living spark is out of the body and the body is dead, the body sinks. The spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water, but when the living spark is out of the body, and the body is dead, the body sinks. Yeah. The body thing. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats just like straw and other things. But as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in the space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet, just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, his energy is just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there's no possibility of the dust falling. But if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets, which are floating in the air, are held in the fist of the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving things stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymn that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the moon nourishes all vegetables. In the fist of, and which are floating in the air, also held in the fist of the universal form of the yes. It is said in the Vedic hymn that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining, the planets are studying. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply of from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word Rasatmaka is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Praninaam Dehamashitah Pranapanamasa Panchamyanam Chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming. Digest the four kinds of food stuff. Fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming. To digest the four kinds of food stuff. According to Ayurveda, I join the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities. And I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of food stuffs. Purport. According to Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all foods and there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger. And when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, the fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 5.1 also confirm that the Supreme Lord of Brahman is situated in the form of fire in the stomach. And is digesting all kinds of food stuff. I am Agnir Vishwanaro, yo I am Nantaha Purushe, Yenidamannam Pachayate. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of food stuff, the living is not independent in the eating process. Unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there is no possibility of eating. He just produces and digests foodstuffs, and by his grace, we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra 1.2.7, this is also confirmed. Shabdadibhyontah pratisthana cha. The Lord is situated within the sound and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are four kinds of food. Some are drunk, some are sweet, some are licked up, and some are sucked. And he is the digestive force for all of them. Sarvasacham Vidisannivishto Mattas Padiryanamapohan Cha Vedesha Sarverahame Vedya Vedanta Kritpeta. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgiveness by all the Vedas. I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. The required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Veda gives the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasdev. Is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasdev in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and digester of food stuff. The witness of his activity and the giver of knowledge in the form of Vedas, and the Supreme Personality Godhead, Shri Krishna, the teacher of the way. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Because God is all good, God is all merciful. Antah Purvishta Shastra Jnanam. Shastra Jnanam. Living entities forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew the work and where he ended his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world, according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord, stated locally in his heart. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world, according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord, situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. Even is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because the living entity needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. So, Sarvar, Vedar, Giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedansutra and Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Veda is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 1.14 confirm this in the following words. Tattu Samanvaya, one can attain perfection in three stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality Godhead. By following the different processes, one can approach him, and at the end, one can attain the Supreme Goal, who is no other than Supreme, Supreme Personality Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Dvavimopurisholoko Charakshara Evacha Sarasarvani Bhutani Kutastokshara Uchate. There are two classes of beings, the infallible and the fallible and infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is infallible. Purport. As already explained, the Lord is in his incarnation of Vyasa compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here, the Lord is giving in summary the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that living entities are innumerable, can be divided into two classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are the eternally separated part and parcel of the Supreme Personality Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta. And the Sanskrit word given here is Chara Sarvani Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. But since the Supreme Personality Godhead has stated in Vedanta Sutra as the source of all emanation, that conception is explained. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are studying in this world with the mind and factors have their material bodies, which are changing as long as as long as the living entity is conditioned, this body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing. So the living entity appears to be changing, but the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter, therefore there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. They all exist in oneness. Chara Sarvani Bhutani. Any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being Brahma down to Swan, and is changing its body. Therefore, they're all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always debated in oneness. Uttama Purushan Satsvaya Paramatme Jitahita Yo Lokatrayam Avishya Vivartya Vayeshwaraha. Beside these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the three worlds and is maintaining them. Purport. The idea of this verse is very nicely explained in the Katha Upanishad and Shveta Sutra Upanishad. It's clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of them are conditioned and some of them who are liberated, some of whom are liberated. There is a Supreme Personality Godhead who is Paramatma. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows. Nitya Nityanam Chaitanya Chaitranam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one Supreme Living Personality, the Supreme Personality Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to the different birth. The Supreme Personality God is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. So, can we read just 3 verses of Gita? Just 3 verses. 50. In 5 minutes, I'll finish. You don't mind? Will you take rest? Take rest. Text 18. Yasmacharamati ham aksharaadapi chottamaha atosmi loke vede cha prathitah purushottamah. Because I am transcendental, because both the beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Purport. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality Godhead Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of all personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potential of the Supreme Personality Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies in the Purusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures, as come from the Nirukti dictionary. Lokayate Vedartho Nena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures. The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, Chandogya Upanishad 8.12.3. Tavad esha samprasado charita samuthaya param jyoti rupam pada svena rupena bhi saptate sa uttama purusha. The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Then in his form, he remains in his spiritual identity. That Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyoti. Then in his form, he remains in his spiritual identity. That Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence. And this means the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That is the meaning. That Supreme Personality has also localized as far as Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashari, he explains the Vedic knowledge of Vyasdev. 619. Yo mameva sammudo janati purushottamam sa sarva vidyajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotion service to me, O son of Bharata. Purport. There are many philosophical speculations about the concept positions of unity and the Supreme Personality of Truth. Now, in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The perfect knower goes on simply, the imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth. But the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of Bhagavad Gita, this fact is being stressed at every step. And still there are many stubborn commentators on Bhagavad Gita who consider supreme absolute truth and the living truth to be one and the same. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral receptions. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like hawks is not sufficient, and one must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita, and these divinities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad Gita that living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. The word bhajati is very significant. In many places, the word bhajati is expressed in the relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in the full Krishna consciousness in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of the Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the supreme absolute truth. He has already come to the point because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds and thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all his speculation for many years and lives is a useless waste of time. Last verse, text 20. Iti guyatamam shastram idumaktamaya etad buddhva buddhimanasya kritascha bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, most in this one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Purport. The Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all Vedic scriptures, and one should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality Godhead. Thus, one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality Godhead and engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contamination of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding, where devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place with the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance is called darkness. When the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present, under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. The word anaga, by which Arjuna is addressed, is significant. Anaga, O sinless one, means that unless one is free from all sinful reactions, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities, then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically becomes to the state of sinlessness. While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. It's a very nice performance. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental living service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of heart is that as one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and possession of matter. He can lord it over and then becomes attached to it. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart. And the rest of the chapter, from the 6th through the end, discusses Purushottama Yoga. Thus, and the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the matter of Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. I'm so grateful to you for joining.